Welcome to CAM Matters, Condos, Co-ops, HOAs, and beyond. Betsy Barbieux is an informational leader in Florida on community association living, rights, and obligations. She is an expert on the rights and obligations of owners as well as the association. If you live or are planning to live in the state of Florida, there's a good chance you'll be part of a community association. And by the end of this show, you'll know a little bit more about community associations and why they matter.
Welcome to the June 2024 episode of CAM Matters. I am Suzanne with Betsy Barbieux, and today I feel like we're starting the script to a potential comedy act along Jeff Foxworthy's. So you know you're a micromanager when. Hey, Betsy, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Yes, I've had a couple of people lately say, do you have anything about micromanagers and what to do? So I got to looking and thought, well, you might be a micromanager if.
Well, let's start with, I think that we've all had them, and it's really an unpleasant. It hurts your self-esteem. It makes you feel like you can't move forward. You feel not valid, like good enough. Yeah. So it's across the board with lots of careers, but this one specifically is what we're going to dive into. Let's kind of start to unfold that.
And the Cam that came to see me, I felt like he had become literally afraid to make a decision at all. So when you get up in the morning dreading putting on your name tag and coming to work, and your stomach gets upset, and you just think, if I have to go to work, I'm going to throw up because I know I'm not going to do anything right today.
Right.
That's just a horrible way to work. And whether it's been in the CAM industry or some other job or career that you've had, I think, like you said, we've all experienced a micromanager at some point. I just hope that I'm not one. And I'm hoping that you will recognize yourself if you are one and see if you can put the brakes on that. There are a lot of
Betsy, before we get started, let's talk about in what scenario are we talking about managers being micromanaged or boards, or what scenario are you
in this particular circumstance? And I think that it's general enough. This is a manager being micromanaged by a board member.
Okay.
And the board member is our employer. The board members are our employers. But there's a difference in managing and leading. And the board is supposed to lead and set policy and procedure. And the manager manages tasks, not the board.
Okay.
Leave the manager alone and let them decide which tasks to do when. They have the overall idea of what they're supposed to do.
Right.
And stay within the budget, keep the lawns clean and nice and neat, along with the pool and the buildings.
Yeah.
Make sure the money comes in and goes out right. But don't tell me how to do it.
Right. I think one of the problems comes in when the previous boss and a new one comes in, you don't want that change where they could be bringing a fresh perspective,
They could be. And this particular manager, he had been in the office for, half a dozen years. So he had already worked with the CAM who retired. So he knew how she did it.
Sure.
But he needed his own way of doing it.
Right.
And didn't need a board member hovering over him, reminding him this is the way she did it.
Okay.
If he could accomplish the same goal a different way, I don't see what the problem is.
Okay. So you may be a micromanager if...
You might be a micromanager if, and I'm going to read some of these, you are unable to delegate.
Mm-hmm.
You might be a micromanager if you over-communicate and over-explain step-by-step details. If you hover, but you try to look like you're not hovering. like you forgot something, so you have to come back and say, was this on your desk? I'm looking for such and such, just making excuses for hovering.
Okay.
If you constantly schedule meetings, I might have to come back to this one. I've experienced this with somebody. This is maddening. And you ask the staff and others to account for every minute of their day. Oh, I can cancel on that one too. you don't allow others to slow down or stop. They must always be hustling. And you sign off on all teammates' work. Checks and balances are good, but you probably don't need to sign off on everything.
Meaning you're in charge of everything. Everything goes right.
And
So
and one more thing, you're the sole point of contact for everybody. So there are no other resources but you.
Betsy, there were two that stood out to you that struck a nerve, and I want to go back to those two.
Constantly scheduled meetings. Oh my gosh, probably 10 years ago or so, I experienced this on a massive level, and it took me a long time to figure it out. I had been called into a company to try to help the staff deal with the person who was scheduling meetings over and over again. And as I sat through some of those, I began to realize what it was. He was scheduling these meetings because he was an auditory thinker.
Okay.
When he liked to think out loud, but he needed an audience. So he'd pull all the staff out of their workspaces, and they'd all have a meeting. Got to experience this. It's pretty painful. Got to have a meeting, and he had a habit of saying, "What do you think? What do you think?" But that was not really a "what do you think" question. It was his way of pausing to give himself another moment to say what he thought. It was a habitual phrase that was meaningless to him.
Okay.
But to everybody else, they thought he was saying, "What do you think?"
Okay, sure.
And he would pause toward the end of the meeting, you're sitting there, been there like an hour, and you think he's winding down and he's gotten through all of his talking points and he's kind of figured stuff out in his head because he's verbal and needed to talk out loud to an audience to be able to think. And at the end, he'd say, "What do you think?" And at first, people would chirp up and say what they thought. Well, he just flew all over them. He would defend himself. He would explain to them why their thoughts were wrong or incorrect or wouldn't work, or he just wouldn't ever consider that. And eventually, I had been to this office a couple of times, and eventually nobody said anything. So when he said, "What do you think?" everybody was just fine. So he thought everybody agreed with him.
Mm-hmm.
And it took a while for me to explain it to them, because then I would meet with the staff separately and say, this is what he's doing, and that's why y'all are being driven crazy. Because he has to have an audience to be verbal to. And
Betsy, that's incredibly insightful what you saw, that you analyzed it and then you were able to explain it and have it make sense and let people know they're not crazy. This is what's happening. That's a beautiful talent to have.
So, I've done that twice. There was another team that I went to work with, and what we settled on, and this gentleman, the other gentleman, not the first one who kept saying, "What do you think? What do you think?" But the other gentleman, he would not call a meeting, but he would go from office to office to office to office. And he would sit down with each person, interrupt them, sit down and go, "Here's what I've been thinking." And so he'd tell them a plan. And then he'd go to the next office and he'd say, "Here's what I've been thinking. What do you think?" And he'd leave from there and go, "That's what I'll do." So that person would start working in toward that idea. Then he'd go to the next office and talk to them and leave saying, "That's what I'll do." And that person would start working toward that plan. And he had about 6 supervisors that he would do that to. And as he left each one, they each were left with a different thought of, "This is the way we're going to go." And I finally figured that out and talked to his second in command, and he was receptive in my observation. He said, so what are we going to do? He said, because this is the way I work. I need to go and talk to each one of them. So what are we going to do? I said, well, what we're going to do is until you give the word to your second in command, until you give the word to her that this is the way we're going, none of these supervisors are going to start working on what you talk with them about.
That's amazing.
So they came up with a plan. Now, the first gentleman that I told you about, he would never acknowledge that he was the problem.
Sure. So let me ask you this. We're going to be moving into a break soon. What are some of the things that we can control when it comes to, being micromanaged? And what is there I love the shift that you gave these people to be able to cope with this. What advice can you give?
Well, the second scenario worked out really good because he acknowledged that he did do that and that he was going to do that. So what could we do? We came up with a plan. First of all, we never did. But now what we, I think, move into with this, and this gentleman that came to see me not too long ago, what he had not ever thought about or considered was that what was being stomped on were his boundaries. And we do have personal boundaries, and you do have the right to exercise your personal boundaries. And in a broad scope, broad list, your boundaries are your thoughts, your words, your actions, your attitudes, and your motives. You control all of those. The things that you have control of, you can have, if you discipline yourself, you can have control of your thoughts. You can have control of your words, your thoughts. And this is where a boundary breaker will get to you, is with your own thoughts. You'll begin to think that you're not worthy. You'll begin to think that you can't do anything, you can't ever please anybody. But you need to have enough of your own self-esteem to know that I do know some things and I am good at what I do. Can I learn more? Sure, we can always learn more. But your self-thoughts sometimes are very destructive and it can kind of spiral down. So you've got thoughts, words, actions, attitudes. You can come in with a crummy attitude for the day, or you can come in with, not going to let anybody ruin my day. And then motives. Only you can know what your motives are. Sometimes we can say words on the outside that sound good, but our motive is manipulative. And the person who knows themselves can check their motives, because other people can read them sometimes. I think all of us have had a child that we tried to get them to do something by praising them. And I remember my son turned right around to me one day and said, "You're just telling me that because you want me to do it again." I think we've all had a child just kind of...
Oh, yeah. There you go.
You just told me
wow.
I did good because you just want me to do it again.
That didn't work. Okay.
And the things that you cannot control would be things like your past. You cannot control your future. You cannot control the actions of others. You cannot control the opinions of others. You can't control what happens around you. You can't control what people think about you. You cannot control the outcome of your efforts. Sometimes you try your best, but it just doesn't work. And you cannot control how other people take care of themselves. And I think that's a big codependent lesson that we won't go into today.
That's a whole nother show. Betsy, we're going to move into the break, but a little tease here. When we think about being micromanaged, on the other side of the break, we're going to talk about a situation that may be affecting you, that you may be micromanaged, you hadn't even thought about. So we'll come right back to that.
Okay.
Are you ready for a new career? Do you have skills or interest in management, real estate, construction, maintenance, accounting, strategic planning, project management, budgets, human resource management, lawn and landscaping, pool services, or any other expertise needed to operate a community association? If you do, community association management could be for you. For more information, feel free to email Betsy at betsy@floridacamschools.com or visit the Florida Cam Schools website at www.floridacamschools.com. Florida Community Association management continues to grow. Career opportunities abound.
Welcome back to CAM Matters. I am Suzanne with Betsy Barbieux, and we're talking about micromanaging. And Betsy, there's an area of people in our lives that we might not stop to think are micromanagers. We're talking about how to overcome that and how to work through it. But what are your thoughts? Who are these people you're thinking about?
You're baiting me. You just know that all you have to do is bait me, and I'm just going to go right for the legislators.
Let's go.
First, let me show everybody, and I appreciate everybody who sends me the little bless your heart.
Bless your heart.
Things. But this I got at Fantasy World when I did a training for their staff.
Okay.
Bless your
Oh, yes. Uh-huh.
They gave me a T-shirt before I left the training. They made me a T-shirt that said, bless your heart. And for those of you who have been in my pre-licensing class, you know that is my favorite saying, and it comes about a half an hour into the pre-licensing class when I teach you how to cuss Southern style. Because the rest of the day and a half of class is bless the legislators' hearts. The legislators have made it almost impossible to teach the pre-licensing class because you have to learn the same kind of law 3 different ways. Right. But I tell you what, did they go overboard with micromanaging? Bless their hearts.
What happened?
But they, legislators, I guess maybe the analogy would be there are leaders and there is management. And leaders, like a board of directors, sets policy and procedures. And then the CAM, the manager, manages the tasks to get the policies and procedures done. Right. The legislators have forgotten that they're supposed to be the leaders and give us the overarching policies and procedures, also known as laws, but we, the people, are the ones who choose how to do the work.
Mm-hmm. And how to execute it, right.
Choose how to be contractually obligated to each other and how each other fulfills their parts of the contract. And oh my goodness, they have absolutely gone from legislating to micromanaging managers and telling you how many meetings you've got to have, how many of this and that and the other, all of the details, and they can't change them and make them the same for all 3 laws. So now if you're an HOA manager, you've got to have 5 extra hours of training on stuff that takes 30 minutes to train. And it's in financial, managing an HOA and financial record keeping and all that is no different for an HOA than it is for a condo or a co-op. So I don't know what the heck I'm supposed to teach. And then the sneaker bill that sneaked up on, as far as I know, it sneaked up on all of us. I didn't hear any conversation about it, but they changed the legislation so that if you're a CAM and you've had an active license, not that you've practiced for 10 years, but had an active license for 10 years, you don't have to have any more continuing ed. Not even a legal update.
Okay. That's mind-blowing.
Update.
Look, I'm thinking about things as basic as like hairstylists or, and this is not basic, but medicine.
Yeah.
I mean, that continuing teachers, things are constantly coming out that are new and reminders and best practices. And what are they thinking?
I don't know. I don't know who started that or why anybody even would. But to have managers not be required to at least have a legal update every year is insane. I'm going to go back 10 years. In 2013, I was appointed by Governor Scott to be on the CAM Regulatory Council. And that's the group of peers that's on the ground, and we look at all the stuff that goes on with managers, and we suggest regulation that gets suggested up to the division and up to the department, and they write regulations. Well, that's the way it's supposed to work, but it doesn't actually work that way, but that's a nice theory. But all I remember listening to were the long-standing, long-term CAM regulatory council members talking about how uneducated managers are and how much they need more education. And so, 3 years ago, they reduced the education that's required. The pre-licensing education was reduced by 2 hours, and the continuing ed was reduced by 5 hours. And now they're going to reduce that to none if you have had an active license, not practiced, but had an active license for 10 years. But if you're an HOA manager, you've got to have 5 more hours of something else that takes 30 minutes to do. I'm just
Wow.
beside myself.
So the ultimate in being micromanaged by people who really are not boots on the ground. They're not talking to people who are really executing this stuff.
No, and we're supposed to have had lobbyists that represent our interest, but obviously not. But the legislators operate with a knee-jerk reaction. Somebody complains, a group of constituents complain, a group pays a bunch of lobbyists and they complain, and there's a knee-jerk reaction, we're going to throw this law in without any thought of how to implement it. For instance, the homeowner association managers have to have 5 hours of additional training. Well, there's no registry of homeowner association managers. So I don't know how that...
Okay. So Betsy, this is my microphone, and I'm holding it up to you, and you have a chance. You have 1 minute to talk to the legislators. What are you saying to them?
So would you please consult with me and some other managers who actually do the work, and me in particular, because I have to train on it, and I have no idea what to teach. There's all this information that has to be added to board member training. I'm supposed to teach board members how to read financial statements. Well, for one thing, 95% of board member treasurers don't know how to read a financial statement and don't want to and are terrified of looking at financials. I don't know how I'm supposed to teach them to read financials and all the other things I'm supposed to teach them in a 4-hour class. Now, granted, I already offer the 4-hour class. That I've done for over a decade now. As far as I know, I'm the only one who offers the 4-hour board certification class. But how do you teach How do you teach financials to somebody who doesn't want to know it?
Yeah. Betsy, we have got to begin to bring this airplane down, but we can't leave before we start talking about this subject. I love the YES conference that's coming up in August. How are things going?
It's going very well. The registrations are coming in, and they're coming in pretty much every day now. So if you're going to attend, even if you've been licensed more than 10 years, if you're going to attend, you need to go in and get your registration in. But we're going to have Jane Boland, the attorney from South Florida, who will come and do the legal update, and we'll talk about some of these laws. That will be day one, and then I will finish out day one with different communication styles and different work methods of each communication style, stress levels, and who knows what all we'll talk about then. And then on day two, we'll have 4 different subjects. We'll have Phil Massey, who will talk to us about insurance and current things that are going on there. Mitch Drimmer will talk to us about collections, which we might need to know more of with everybody being special assessed for more building repairs and things. We'll have Matt Queasley from Reserve Advisors, who is going to talk with us about reserve studies. And then we will have Charles Goodwin from IGC Construction, who will talk to us about roofs.
Going to be great. And if they want to register, how do they do that?
FloridaCamSchools.com.
Awesome. Betsy, it was a very emotional and engaging topic today. Very informative. Thank you so much. We hope that you found this useful and that you will share the information somehow, whether it's verbally. We'd love for you to like this on the platform that you're consuming it. I actually share it on that platform as well. Betsy puts a lot of time and effort into these shows so that she can make the CAM lifestyle, CAM family stronger. So thank you for joining us. We will see you. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but we will see you for the next episode in July.
July. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to CAM Matters. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. For more information, feel free to email Betsy at betsy@floridacamschools.com or visit the Florida Cam Schools website at www.floridacamschools.com. Information provided on this show is general in nature and does not constitute legal advice. Please contact a licensed attorney for your specific situation.